You're listening to Beyond the Couch podcast with Dr. Sally Nazari, where we look at you beyond the couch and build ways to enrich your life, share your triumphs, achieve your goals, and most importantly, where we'll be celebrating you. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Couch. I'm your host, licensed psychologist and Reiki master teacher, Dr. Sally Nazari. We've been taking a closer look at the impact of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. We've discussed an overview of what happens in PTSD and explored in more depth how people with PTSD are impacted by the re-experiencing cluster of PTSD symptoms. Today, we're going to look more thoroughly at the hyperarousal set of challenges we see in PTSD. The hyperarousal cluster can be particularly difficult and can make just getting through the day-to-day activities not only exhausting and draining, but also very scary as well. I'll be offering some tips, tools, strategies, and resources for helping to break out of this state in today's episode, along with access to a quick, effective tool in the show notes. Imagine this. Have you ever been driving along in your car, looked away from the road in front of you for a second, and when you look back, traffic has stopped and you have to slam on your brakes so you don't rear-end the car in front of you? You know that feeling you get? Startled, tense, heart pounding, cold sweat. That's what hyperarousal has often been described as feeling, but those who experience it often say that it's a feeling that can come on out of nowhere with no real cause, or it can be brought on when they're already feeling anxiety or overstimulated. For those with a trauma experience behind them, this hyperarousal can also be brought on whenever they come across a reminder of the experience or a trigger. For most people who've encountered a traumatic event or something that has left them feeling terrified, helpless, overwhelmed, or literally scared for their life, there is a persistent stress on the body and mind afterwards. As we talked about in our Understanding Disruptions episode, when we are met with stressors, even if they're imagined or anticipated, our physiology activates or stimulates our fight, flight, freeze responses. This type of arousal serves to keep us on alert for dangers so we can survive in the best ways possible. Hyperarousal refers to the continuous alert response to danger. If we consider this in terms of our physiology, hyperarousal is when the autonomic nervous system, or ANS, is in a constant state of activation. The ANS is made up of two parts: the sympathetic nervous system, SNS, and the parasympathetic nervous system, PNS. As a whole, the ANS works to balance a person's response to certain stimuli. When this balance is not kept, a person can experience a persistent state of arousal. In short, hyperarousal is what gives fuel to the fight, flight, freeze reaction. It's the adrenaline rush a person feels when fear or danger is imminent. This constant state of overdrive can be detrimental for us when it lasts for longer durations. While a person can experience hyperarousal without having PTSD, a person with PTSD will always show signs of hyperarousal. Others may experience hyperarousal that's caused by extreme stress, such as deadlines at work, holiday shopping, financial worries, traffic, or even conflicts. In any case, hyperarousal can have a crippling effect on a person's life, causing them to avoid certain activities that may cause them to feel uneasy. Some of the ways we see people struggle with hyperarousal in their lives include having a hard time concentrating, disruptions in sleep, constantly feeling on alert, a low threshold for pain, fatigue, a sense of panic or anxiety, easily being startled in an exaggerated way, and irritability or angry outbursts. These can also increase over time, worsening and creating a cycle of greater problems. In fact, they can even interfere with our relationships with family and friends, or our ability to do our work in an effective way. Our physical health can also be compromised and even jeopardized. To many, there seems to be an overlap between anxiety and hyperarousal. Despite many similarities, they're not quite the same. Here's the thing. Anxiety can certainly be a root cause of hyperarousal, and the reverse is also true. Hyperarousal symptoms can increase anxiety in a feedback mechanism. One can easily blend into and even turn into the other. So what's the real difference? Anxiety can be traced to specific thoughts, such as, what if I never sleep again? Or, what if something terrible happens? Hyperarousal might be traceable to an identifiable thought, but usually it's more difficult to figure out and can feel more diffuse or ever-present. The cause-effect relationship between thinking and feeling is less clear, more vague, less specific, and more mysterious. The trigger might be physical rather than emotional in nature, external rather than internal. It's also important to keep in mind that the emotions involved are not limited to anxiety. In fact, excitement or even happiness might be triggers for hyperarousal. Now that we have a better understanding of what hyperarousal actually is and how it works, let's take a bit of a closer look at how we can manage it. One of the ways we can intervene with hyperarousal is through regulating our physiology. Certain types of things, such as caffeine, are further stimulating to the body, while other things can help to slow the body and racing mind down. We can ensure that we're avoiding the things that further stimulate not only our body, but our fear and anxiety-based thoughts that focus on danger. At the same time, we can begin to build habits that help us to stay in the present moment, such as mindfulness, and that help to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Mindfulness can help us to anchor in the present and to shift any difficult thoughts so that we can begin shutting off the internal danger switch that's constantly on during hyperarousal. Not only this, but mindfulness can help us to better detect the somatic and physiological cues that bring on hyperarousal, and in catching these cues early on, we can learn to shut them off or slow them down much more quickly. Relaxation strategies and cognitive restructuring are two ways of also slowing this process down. In fact, the countdown coping technique I am including in the show notes can help to both slow down our physiology in activating the parasympathetic nervous system and also help us focus on the experience of the here and now and relax our thoughts. Another helpful technique is progressive muscle relaxation, which I will explore in more depth and also lead you through a guided practice in an upcoming episode. With hyperarousal, we do often see muscular tension which, over time, can bring with it greater somatic pain and concerns, but it can also heighten the sense that there is a danger present. Progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR, is an exercise that sequentially goes through areas of the body and contracts and releases each muscle in an exaggerated fashion to promote somatic, emotional, and cognitive relief. This technique integrates the physiological and thought-based components of hyperarousal to help us begin to shut down that alert to danger signal that keeps firing in hyperarousal and bringing on difficulties. Ensuring that our basic physical needs are also properly attended to can be an important strategy for managing hyperarousal. Things such as adequate and restorative sleep, hydration, eating a proper diet, and exercise can all help to offset the stress hormones in our body that are overactivated with hyperarousal. However, these very things can often become difficult to balance in this state. Taking extra steps to attend to them can be particularly helpful. We will be looking at these in more depth in future episodes as well to give you even more ways to get back on track. As we can imagine from gaining a better understanding of hyperarousal today, not only are the symptoms themselves challenging to edit, as we can imagine from gaining a better understanding of hyperarousal today, not only are the symptoms themselves challenging to navigate on their own, but they can often leave a person feeling more frustrated, confused, and helpless because of them. Unfortunately, these feelings can further compound the experience of hyperarousal because, well, they bring on added stress. A more helpful strategy might be to not only try and be patient and compassionate with ourselves, but to also track, log, or journal the experiences. This way, as we're working toward getting our body and mind back to a greater balance, we have a measurable baseline for comparison, and we can more easily notice our progress. This sense of progression can bring with it a sense of relief. It not only feels like an improvement, but we can also begin to really feel like the potential threat, in this case hyperarousal itself, is less and less of a threat as we keep taking steps forward. Furthermore, we can see patterns emerge. For example, certain foods or substances may exacerbate hyperarousal, and making this observation can help us to eliminate those things. Of course, it's important to address PTSD with a specialized professional, such as a trauma therapist or psychiatrist. Several medications can help alleviate hyperarousal while working with a therapist. Therapy strategies for PTSD will be discussed in more depth in an upcoming episode, but several therapy modalities have shown scientific data indicative of notable relief in PTSD. One example is cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, for PTSD, which is a short-term 12-session treatment that helps people not only build the tools for overcoming the difficulties we see in PTSD, but to also continue shifting the thoughts regarding the danger, their sense of self, and understanding about others and the world that follow a traumatic event. You can read a bit more about my CPT group and individual services on my website, linked in the show notes. We've spent some time today reviewing how our body and mind continue to detect danger following a traumatic experience and send out the danger alert signals even in the absence of a present-day threat. We also looked at a few ways to begin combating this experience of hyperarousal. And don't forget to access your Countdown Coping mini ebook through the show notes. In the next discussion of our Looking at Trauma series, we will look at how this hyperarousal cluster and the re-experiencing cluster of PTSD contribute to the avoidance cluster of PTSD. We'll also have a Mindful Monday episode that highlights our somatic experiences as well. I'll look forward to sharing those things with you. In the meantime, take care.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Couch Podcast, a space for celebrating you. The contents of this episode are for informational and supplemental purposes only, and not a substitute for professional services. For more access to You Beyond the Couch, check out www.drsallynazari.com.